Welcome to today's episode of Queerly Natural, where we talk about queerness in the natural world. We discuss different traits and qualities of animals, plants, fungi, and more, and how they relate to queer identities in humans. Some may argue our identities are not natural, and we are here to say they queerly are. We're your hosts. I'm Ilana.
And I'm Sage. As always, thank you to our Legacy Tree patron, Nate. If you'd like to join Nate in supporting the show, you can do that by contributing to our Patreon or Ko-fi, or by talking about us on social media. Now for today's episode, we will be talking about the bowhead whale. Join us for a whale of a time. Hello, welcome to this episode of Queerly Natural, in which we will be talking about the bowhead whale.
Ooh.
Right? Our first ocean mammal.
Does it have a bow on its head?
That'd be cute. But no, we'll talk about why it's named the bowhead whale in a second. But it's not quite because of any accessories the whale chose.
Super stylish whale.
Who knows? Maybe they have their own styles going on and we just don't know about it.
I mean, apparently there were whales that were wearing fish on their heads for a while.
Right? Killer whales?
Yeah.
I think I saw the same post and that was like one of the trends. But I remember there were other trends that Killer Whale Society got caught up by too. I'm trying to remember some of them. I think one of them was like teens like to damage boat propellers or something. Just like to be hooligans.
Hooligans.
Anyway, some other names for the bowhead whale include the Greenland right whale, the Arctic whale, and some other names American whalemen called them were the steepletop whale or the polar whale.
So many names. Gotta love common names.
My personal favorite is the steepletop whale. Steepletop, just, I think it's very cute. This whale is called the polar whale and the Arctic whale because it is the only whale that is endemic to Arctic and subarctic oceans. So there are other whales that spend some time in the Arctic Ocean, but all these other whales migrate to warmer waters, at least for when they're calving, if not for the summer season. But these whales are the only whales that spend all of their time in the Arctic Ocean. Yeah, so that's their deal. Very into chilly oceans.
Just enjoying the cold weather. The other whales are going down to Florida for the summer. These guys are staying around.
Right. The scientific name of this whale is Balena mysticetus, and they're the only living representative of that entire genus Balena. And I'm going to explain a little bit the taxonomic background to that decision for them to be in their own genus. So if you think of the taxonomic hierarchy, we've gotten rid of kingdoms, but there's domains, phyla, class, order, family, genus, species. So this species doesn't share the genus with any other species, but it does share the family with other genera. The argument for where to put them originated way back when they were first described in the 1750s by Carl Linnaeus.
I think I've heard that name before. Maybe just once or twice.
Maybe a couple times. He invented this whole system and he named a ton of things. So he named the species as well, and he also named its relatives in the North Atlantic, the North Pacific, and the Southern Oceans. And at the time, in the 1750s, he thought that the bowhead whale and all of its relatives in these other oceans were the same species, and so he named all of them the right whale. Where's the wrong whale? I don't know.
He's got to be right at some point.
This one's the right whale. He just like saw this whale and he was like, this one feels right.
Yep, passes every exam.
Amazing. Never wrong, ever. So that's why he named all of these whales. And then fast forward 70 years to 1821, and this guy, John Edward Gray, proposed that bowheads be in their own genus. And that's when the arguing started. So since that 1821 proposal, taxonomists have repeatedly recategorized those three populations I named, the North Atlantic, North Pacific, and Southern Ocean populations of whales, as well as the bowhead whale. They've renamed all four of these populations of whale so many times, and each time these four populations are either one species, or they're two species, or they're three species, or they're four species. It can be any of those numbers.
Gotta love those taxonomic debates.
Right? There were people arguing all those sides And any number of those species were placed in one or two genera. So there were arguments all the way until the 2000s. And finally, there was clear evidence that the 3 living right whale populations in those different oceans are closely related. They're different species, but they're closely related. And then the bowhead is its own species and slightly more distantly related. So that's why it was placed separately in its own genus.
That's wild that we didn't discover this until 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was when they finally got clear genetic ideas of what these whales looked like.
Gotta love genetics. It has helped and destroyed so many taxonomic groups.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguments about why separating species solely based on genetics is helpful, because oftentimes genetics will say 2 species are distinct, that their genetics are different enough that they could be different species, but to the human eye, how we use them, how we interact with them, they're the same.
Talking like a true mycologist here.
Ha 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 ha, you've caught me. But in whales, I guess it's different. I think there are other reasons that they're also separate. Because, as we'll get into it, the bowhead whale, it's got its own thing going on. And it's mostly shaped by the fact that it never leaves those icy Arctic waters. Now that the 4 species are separated, the 3 other species of right whale that are in the same genus are in the genus Eubalaena, and then the bowhead is alone in the genus Balaena. And let's see. Okay, so I think it's time for you to look at some pictures.
Ooh. Oh, I love these guys. They look like they're upside down.
Aren't they cute?
Okay, so you've got your classic whale shape where it's fusiform, where it tapers at either end, helps with water dynamics. But the face kind of looks like you took a whale face and turned it upside down and put it back on. The mouth is in a U shape coming up and then curling down to where the eyes are. It's got a little bump on its head right above the mouth, and it's got a little white on its lower lip and chin, little white beard without hair, and doesn't look like special markings on the tail. Oh, maybe I'm having trouble. There may or may not be some markings on the tail, on the underside, and yeah, it's got the little fins that always seem so tiny compared to the big whale body. It definitely looks like they get covered in a lot of barnacles.
Right.
And you said this is a baleen whale?
Yes.
So in its mouth, it's got all these strings hanging down instead of teeth. So it can do things with it and eat. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got most of it.
They're very cute. I think they rank quite highly on the cuteness scale.
They're perfect. No, I'm a huge whale fan, and these are very cute whales. All right, so great job, Ilana. Thanks for that. To get into the official description that I Frankensteined from Wikipedia and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the bowhead whale has a large, robust, dark-colored body with a white chin and a white lower jaw with, I think one source said it has dark spots on that white part on its chin.
Oh, I assumed that was barnacles.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if it was either. They are the longest of all whales.
Ooh, long boy.
They have a large triangular skull, which is used by the whale to break the Arctic ice to create breathing holes. It possesses a strongly bowed lower jaw and a narrow upper jaw. Its baleen is the longest of any whale at 3 meters and is used to strain tiny prey from the water.
That's huge. I'm just picturing a giant mouth with the baleen hanging down, and it's bigger than me by a lot.
I can't, maybe you can help me with this, Ilana, because I can't imagine in my head how exactly they strain the water, because the sources I read said they strain the water as they swim.
So they're basically inhaling the water. And if you're swimming around, you don't even have to suck in that hard because you're just, You
just kind of open your mouth, yeah, because you're moving forward. Future sage here. To clarify how the whale catches its food, the whale intakes water through its open mouth. It then closes the baleen and pushes the water out of its mouth through the baleen, so it strains the little foods from the water. This doesn't interrupt their breathing or their holding their breath. Unlike us, whales have an esophagus that is separate from their trachea, so they can't choke on food or water the way we do. Back to the episode. So describe the baleen itself in more depth, because like I said, it's the biggest of any whale. It's 3 meters long. So each bowhead has 2 racks of baleen plates is what they're called. And these, like Ilana said, they hang down on each side of the upper jaw. Each of these 2 racks has 330 individual pieces of baleen. So it's kind of like comb teeth, like layered all over. And there are 333 comb teeth on each rack. The shortest plates are in the front and the back of the mouth, and the longest ones hang down in the middle. The baleen plates are made up of a horn-like substance and may be up to 13 feet long, the longest of any baleen whale. The number before was 3 meters, because I was like, did I just like put a 1 there accidentally? No. The average is like 3 meters, but they can be up to 13 feet. So 3 meters is like 10 feet. They can be up to 13 feet.
More than 2 of me.
Right? More than 2 of you, more than 2 of me, and more than 2 of most humans, I think. The inner margins of the baleen plates are fringed in long, fine hairs that, as we said, act as a filter to sieve food out of the water. So that's what they have. Not all whales have baleens. There are toothed whales, which makes sense because whales are mammals.
Orcas. Yeah, there's toothed whales. Those are the ones that eat larger stuff. The baleen whales pretty much are plankton feeding.
That's this guy. The bowhead whale eats mostly krill, that kind of thing. The bowhead whale, it has paired blowholes.
Oh, it has 2?
Yeah, it has 2 of them. And this is like not uncommon either. Some dolphins can have 2 blowholes. So it has 2 of them at the highest point of the head, and they can blow a spout up to 20 feet high. And that spout, since there are 2 of them, will be V-shaped. The bowhead's blubber is the thickest of any animal, with a maximum of 43 to 50 centimeters, which is 17 to 19 inches thick. Unlike most cetaceans, which are whales, the bowheads do not have a dorsal fin. And this is an adaptation for spending so much time under the sea ice. So they're under this ice. The dorsal fin was more likely to be damaged than anything else. So long time ago, they lost it. And then like the sperm whale and some other whales, the bowhead whale has a vestigial pelvis that is not connected to the spine. Fun fact. Do they have leg bones anymore?
So it's just the pelvis bone. And like if you go to museums where they have whale skeletons, you'll see these 2 little bones just like hanging free. It's hilarious to me.
It's so funny. Yeah, definitely look up a whale skeleton if you've never seen that, because like Ilana said, just the spine and then this pelvis that's not connected to anything. I think it serves a purpose by like creating a focal point for the penis. I think that's like something I remember learning in college, something like that. I think they would have lost it though if they didn't have to like leverage their dick off of something. So yeah, definitely look up a whale skeleton. And that's what they look like. Now on to the bowhead whale's ecology. So first we're going to talk about what it eats. We got into the baleen and how they eat krill by combing the prey from the water through the baleen. They eat exclusively marine invertebrates, including krill, but also copepods and small crustaceans. They also eat other invertebrates and small fish. Scientists estimate they eat a total of 100 metric tons, which equals over 220,000 pounds of crustaceans per year.
Wow. It's a lot of tiny little foods.
Yeah, that shit adds up. They catch their food at all depths in the water, from the surface to the bottom, and they catch food under ice or in open water where they don't have ice above them. If you look at their body, compared to other whales, they have a little less of like a streamlined shape to them. Like they have that bump on the head, you know, like there's something about their shape that isn't necessarily like entirely streamlined. And that's because these whales don't move very quickly. They don't have to move quickly to like catch their food or anything. The most they need to do is migrate. So they catch all their food swimming at their average pace of 2 to 4 miles an hour.
Just chill.
Just taking a stroll. They're not in a rush. Though a study by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game found that bowheads will spend days to weeks feeding in specific areas on concentrations of prey. So they might not even need to be moving at all to be feeding. They might just like find a spot and chill out and then be like, oh, I should go find the next place, and then amble on. They usually feed solitarily, but they will sometimes form groups and feed in something called echelon formation. Echelon? I don't know how to say that.
I don't know.
I'm just going to wing it. Echelon formation is where they form what was described as a half V, so kind of like an angled line, and they'll swim like that offset from each other to create vortices in the water and make their prey kind of group together and easier to catch with minimal effort. So that's what they eat. What eats them? They are prey to killer whales. That is their primary predator. Scars consistent with killer whale attacks have been found on about 8% of bowhead whales that were subsistence hunted. So the only way that we really get to study these whales is either by tagging them and just being able to track their location, which gives us some information, but it doesn't give us all information.
And the tags only work for so long. Some detach themselves after time purposely. Some just, don't work that long.
Yeah, exactly. So we can tag them for a certain amount of time as long as the tags work. Sometimes the tags are lost. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And even when the tags do work, it gives you location, but it's not like a video feed. You don't get to see like what the whale's doing all the time. You just get to know where it is.
A whale with a GoPro.
Right? That would honestly be the most ideal, though, if we're talking about it. And then the only other way we know about their whereabouts is by sightings on boats or from their being subsistence hunted and then their bodies being studied. So when they are subsistence hunted, they will be examined and they're recognized by the scars that they carry. And a lot of these whales, like we said, 8% have scars consistent with killer whale attacks. They also get scarring from running into boats.
Boats is a big issue for a lot of whales.
Right. Another issue is being entangled in fishing equipment. That can scar them too. Basically, the scars that they come back with tell us about what they've been up to. So 8% of them have killer whale scars, and the rate at which these bodies are coming back with those scars is increasing. So they're being attacked by killer whales more often than they were.
Interesting. I wonder if that's like a loss of other food for the killer whale, or like is something causing them to be closer together. Also, fun fact, occasionally I listen to the Speak Up for Ocean Blue podcast, and they did a talk about certain areas that are not nature preserves, but what they do is at certain times of year, the speed of boats allowed is decreased, which showed a significant drop in whale injuries from boats.
That's amazing. And that's such a simple solution. And like you said, it's only a certain part of the year that they need to make that change. I love it. So yeah, they're in danger of, things that we cause as well as killer whales. And like you said, a couple ideas of why they could be being attacked more often. Either the killer whales have less prey, or they could be just in the same area more often. Some other ideas I found proposed to explain this increase in attacks is better sampling. They could be occurring in the same place, and that could be because killer whales are going further north with climate change as the north gets warmer, or bowheads could be spending longer in open water where there isn't ice protecting them because the ice is melting. Killer whale predation is thought to be the primary source of mortality for bowheads. So even though boats and fishing equipment pose a threat, the main threat to them is killer whales. Not to say that we shouldn't mitigate the other ones, though, because it's pretty messed up that the biggest whale on Earth can be killed by our boats.
Longest, not biggest. I'm surprised they're the longest. I really thought blue whales were both biggest and longest.
Yeah, no, they're the longest. And another fun fact is that they are the longest lived whales as well. There are some issues with research because it's very hard to age them, but we have found whales that we were able to reliably age to over 200 years old, which is the oldest of any mammal.
Wow. So I also remember on a podcast episode they had a guest on of someone who studies whale earwax.
What?
Yeah. And apparently you can learn a lot from that. And I think that's one of the ways they can estimate age based on the buildup. I'll have to double check on that. But yeah.
That's so cool. I want to read more about that.
I'll link it in the show notes, or at least in the transcript.
I'm really excited to see that. On to kind of how they live their lives. So they migrate yearly, and that plays a big role in their interaction with us and how they spend their time. So bowhead whales are the only baleen whales that spend their entire lives in the Arctic and subarctic oceans. So they migrate, but they migrate within the Arctic and subarctic oceans. The Alaskan population is what I'm talking about specifically. The other populations could be different, but this is just the one that had the most research done on it. So the Alaskan population spends winter months in the Bering Sea. In the winter, they spend their time in open water areas called Polynias. I'm not sure. There's 2 Y's there. These areas are specifically areas of open water surrounded by ice entirely. And they spend their winter time here or along the southern edge of the ice.
It's a whale bowl.
Right? Personally, I would love to see how the recession of the southern edge of the ice has changed their behavior. In March and April, most bowheads are thought to migrate along leads in the ice through the Chukchi Sea to the Canadian Beaufort Sea, where they spend mid-May through June. They then migrate west along the continental shelf of the Beaufort Sea to Point Barrow from August to October. And then from Point Barrow, they cross the Chukchi Sea and travel south along the Russian coast, passing through the Bering Strait and then back into the Bering Sea, where again they spend their winter from November until they migrate again in March or April. Some whales, though, have been spotted in Russia and the Chukchi Sea in summer as well. So what I outlined is the general movement of most whales. There are stragglers and whales that don't follow this behavior pattern. So that's their migration. As they migrate, they travel long distances under thick ice. And if no open water is available for them, because they still have to breathe, they're mammals, they don't have gills. If there's no open water available for them to take a breath, they'll find the thinnest part of the ice and then they'll break it by pushing up with the top of their head. And that's why they have that bowhead. That's why they have that lump there. That's why their jaw is shaped like that, is because their head is literally like shaped for breaking the ice so that they can breathe.
So don't get head-butted by the bow whale.
Yeah, I would not want to be sandwiched between the bowhead whale's head and the ice.
Ooh, no. No. You wouldn't be there anymore. You'd just be squished.
Inuit whale hunters have reported to see whales break the ice like this when it was up to 2 feet thick.
Strong whale.
That's one tough bone, their skull.
They're strong-headed.
Yeah. So they'll push up, break the ice, form a breathing hole, and then following whales will use the hole that the first whale made rather than breaking the ice again themselves. As they're traveling, they can go 6 to 17 minutes before surfacing, which is pretty big range. And then when they surface, they'll do 4 to 9 blows. The blows are just their breaths. So they'll take 4 to 9 breaths, and then they will dive again. And though there's that range of most dives are 6 to 17 minutes, we have recorded dives of up to 33 minutes.
I love them already.
Right. They're so cute. You're going to love the next part.
Ooh.
You were talking about their ears. I don't know why I hadn't thought about them having ears, but I should have.
It's just ear holes.
Right? They rely on their hearing a lot for navigation, predator avoidance, foraging, and socializing. And some whales will sing while they're traveling and migrating, they'll sing long songs. On the road again. And the cool thing is, between March and April, they migrate. So it's not all the whales traveling in like one pack of whales that can hear each other sing. But for some reason, there will be some whales in the start of the line singing a song. But then whales that follow way after will sing the same song. So, like, there's some connection there, and we don't know what it is. Maybe they can just hear that far. Maybe they're, like, teaching each other these songs. Like, we don't know. But somehow they learn the same songs. That's just adorable.
It's so cute.
Yeah. So, that's how they migrate, what they do while they migrate, where they migrate to. On to reproduction. So, bowhead whales are the longest-lived mammals, and they can live to be over 200 years old. Mating behavior is observed year-round, though most young are conceived late winter or spring. Most calves are born between April and early June, either during or just prior to the spring migration. So between conception and calves being born, the females gestate 13 to 14 months, and then they will give birth to one calf every 3 to 4 years. And at birth, calves are 13 feet long, and they weigh 2,000 pounds, and they can already swim.
They're ready.
Got that pre-downloaded software, baby. And I wanted to talk about the human impact, both how they impact humans and how we have impacted them. The first interactions between our species and their species happened way before recorded history, and that was when Inuit and Inupiaq people, indigenous to what is now Alaska and northern Canada, harvested the bowhead whale sustainably for subsistence. They would hunt these whales, and then they would use every single part of the whale. And a whale would provide the community with food, heat, light, equipment, and shelter. And they would do this by eating the meat. They would burn the fat for heat and light. And then the bones especially were important for shelter and equipment. An entire village could survive off a single whale for an entire year. So that was how humans interacted with them for thousands of years. And how Inuit and Inupiaq peoples continue to interact with them today. And then came commercial whaling, which started in about 1850s. And that was when Europeans began hunting the whales for commercial purposes to maximize their profit, to maximize the amount of product that they could sell to consumers. And this decimated bowhead whale populations. It took a while. It took about 50 to 70 years until the population was truly decimated, but it did happen. And we started with about 50,000 bowhead whales. That's what the numbers were when indigenous communities were hunting the whale for subsistence, and that was it. Commercial whaling devastated those numbers. And then in, I believe, the 1960s, commercial whaling was ended. Whaling was controlled, and now the population is protected, and it is increasing 3% per year. So they're on the comeback. And this is I wouldn't call it a success story, but it is success in the making. Shouldn't have happened in the first place.
It's not tragedy fully.
Right, they're not doomed. But they do still face threats. Despite being protected, they face threats in the form of pollution, from spilled oil, heavy metals, chemicals, and garbage, from boat strikes, from entanglement with fishing gear, from climate change, from ocean acidification, which doesn't necessarily affect them all that much, but it can affect their prey. And then they are also affected by noise pollution, which can affect their ability to feed, navigate, and communicate with each other, as well as detect and avoid predators. And most of the noise pollution that interferes with them is noise from seismic exploration for petroleum reserves. Conservation's going on now, usually done between indigenous communities and government organizations in collaboration. NOAA, the government organization, listed conservation efforts going toward co-managing subsistence harvests, which I'm not sure why this is listed as a conservation effort when that's not one of the threats to their population. But whatever you say, NOAA. They are also trying to reduce risk of entanglement with fishing gear, minimize ocean pollution, noise pollution, and they're developing methods to reduce vessel strikes and respond to dead, injured, or entangled bowhead whales. And I guess that's how they're getting this 3% growth. Primarily, though, was just getting rid of the source of the issue, which was commercial whaling.
Whales being cool.
Whales being cool. I'm so happy that they're coming back. I watched a couple videos of Inupiaq hunters hunting them, and it was heartwarming to hear these hunters talk about how long hunting has been in their family and how much this whale means to them. And the fact that it's coming back is really nice. It's just tragic that the hit to their numbers happened at all. And now it's time to talk about how the bowhead whale is queer. Let me shuffle my notes and we'll get to that next. Hello. A couple updates about the show. This episode is a week late. Our apologies for that. We plan on coming up with a more solid schedule for episodes in the coming year. Therefore, we will not list a date for the release of the next episode. We may take a little break. Keep an eye out on social media for both details about upcoming episodes as well as details about the podcast episodes that Ilana mentioned in the first part of this episode. So basically, just keep an eye out on our social medias and we will be back soon. Back to the episode. And now we're back. So now on to why it's queer. There is a significant occurrence of intersex bowhead whales.
Ooh.
Like I said, there's very little study, even less study on intersex bowhead whales, but it's so common in bowhead whales that despite the lack of research, it did come up, which is something. So these intersex individuals have an unusual assembly of reproductive structures. Externally, they appear entirely female, but internally their gonads are underdeveloped testes, and they lack both a uterus and a ductus deferens. So both the male parts are non-functional, and then the female appearance isn't accompanied by any anatomy that allows them to reproduce as females either. So they will be adult sized and they will develop breasts and they will have female external sexual parts, but internally they have underdeveloped testes. Genetically, they have a normal male karyotype of 40 autosomes, and then like us, they have XY as the combination of sex chromosomes that most often produces the male phenotype. So they have that. However, they still appear female. This condition is called testicular feminization. It occurs in humans too, though in the human population it occurs at a rate of 1 in 62,400 males. I found 2 papers on these intersex whales. One study found 2 intersex males in a whale population of 8,000 total individuals. And that's not even, they didn't sample all 8,000 of those. They only sampled 155. So they found 2 intersex in 155 whales.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, especially when the same condition only happens 1 every 62,000 in humans. And the reason that they end up with this combination of features is thought to be a failure of androgen expression, either as a lack of proper androgen receptors on the target cells. So like they make testosterone, which is the androgen, the male sex hormone. So they make it, but they just don't have the cells to properly receive it, or there's something going wrong in the production process of testosterone. But either way, they end up with this phenotype. In humans, the more common cause is the lack of receptors, but we are not sure in them. The initial report on this phenomenon was published in 1995, and that was the one that caught 155 whales and found 2 intersex. The only other paper I found mentioning this whole thing was published in 2002, and it was on sexual maturation in male bowheads. And they just mentioned in passing, they also caught 2 intersex males. But in this study, it was 2 in 41.
Oh, wow. I wonder if they're increasing or not. I mean, we can't tell because we don't have enough data, but it's a curious question.
Right. It doesn't seem to be something that we're studying all that often, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. You can't really, raise them in a fish tank in the back of the lab.
Right. All these intersex whales that they've caught are adults, so there's reason to believe that they just get to live their lives. Being intersex doesn't stop them from being a whale.
They just get to be awesome and enjoy their existence and the taste of krill.
Right? So that's them. I'll have to do the math to figure out how much more often this happens in whales than humans, but it's a lot more often, which is pretty cool. Genetics can correlate with a certain phenotype, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up with a certain phenotype. So they have XY, which in whales usually denotes male sexual organs, male gonads, etc. But these male whales with the male chromosomes end up looking female, developing breasts, and having external female sexual organs. So you never know what's going to happen along the line between the genotype to the phenotype. We've talked about it before, but that's a very reductionist way to talk about sex and gender.
Bodies do what bodies do.
I'd love to hear more about whale gender. That's a whole other league of research.
Just doing this podcast and not even being like a researcher in this area, it's so frustrating. The lack of information we have on like larger ocean creatures. We just don't know.
Right. And you'd think like these are the charismatic megafauna of the ocean, you know?
Yeah, much harder to catch and very slow to reproduce.
And we just know so little about the ocean too. Like,
we can't breathe water. Might be part of that.
Fund the research. These whales are amazing, and civilizations depend on them. Cultures depend on them. They're just beautiful. And let the whales sing for time immemorial.
Whale Sage, I think that was a good episode.
Me too.
Be who you are, love who you will, and remember, you're queerly natural. Bye!
Bye!
Queerly Natural was created by Ilana Zeitzer, Elizabeth Furman, and Hannah Roden, with music by Makefist20. Thank you, Makefist, for putting your music in the Creative Commons. You are very talented. Visual design for the show is done by Ilana Zeitzer. To get updates about the podcast, follow us at Queerly Natural on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also upload all of our sources and episode transcripts to our website, queerlynatural.com. Above all else, if you liked what you heard today, tell your friends. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay queer and remember, queerly, it's natural.